During the season 4 premiere of Stranger Things, we're introduced to one of the series' newest characters, the dope-dealing D&D master Eddie, played by Joseph Quinn. And while Joseph might be the new kid on the block, he doesn't wait long to leave an impression. Trust me when I say that by the end of the first episode, you're going to be heavily invested in what happens next. If only thanks to Joseph's remarkable performance during an extremely tense and horrifying climactic scene in a new season that's full of them. On the surface, Eddie might not be more than the leader of the Dungeons & Dragons Hellfire Club, but underneath is a quirky outsider and big softie who's struggling to come to grips with his own social limitations. These different levels are admirably brought to life by the character who plays him, Joseph Quinn, a young man with a background in theater who's picked up some major influences along the way by acting with a bunch of England's most talented thespians. So, if you want to learn more about the story and life of Joseph Quinn, then you're in luck because we've got all that for you and more here for you on Famous Life. Joseph Quinn was born on May 15, 1993 in the United Kingdom. Now, a lot of actors will tell you that they've been acting since the time they were knee-high, but in Joseph's case, he wouldn't be lying. Joseph began his acting career as an infant, performing in a school play while still spending his nights sleeping in a nursery. Outside of his early and practical acting experience, Joseph was also a fan of the craft itself, and he remembers vividly watching The Fellowship of the Ring as a kid and being mesmerized by the performance of Ian Holm as Bilbo Baggins. In the particular scene where Bilbo was overtaken with his desire for the ring and attempts to steal it from Frodo in Rivendell. That's my favorite scene too. That moment provided a bolt of electricity to a young Joseph while he was watching it in theater. That's probably why as he grew older, he continued along the path of becoming an actor himself. During his school years, he earned himself a scholarship for acting, and during his final year in 6th form, his class traveled to Edinburgh, Scotland for their final performance. Later that year, he was being accepted into the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, whose alumni include some other famous folk. But just because Joseph was acting before he could form sentences doesn't mean he's a believer in the phrase actors are born and not made. He knows how much hard work goes into creating a career and put his own blood, sweat, and tears in over the years. He's also had the great honor to study at the feet of some of the masters. One of Joseph's chief creative influences is the work of the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. Now, Joseph never had the opportunity to work with Hoffman, who died in 2014, but he's the one actor whose work Joseph will go back to study all the time. He once said, "His ability to act the human condition is quite remarkable, and I think possesses this rare quality with other actors like Olivia Colman also have. There is a familiarity when you're watching them. You feel like you know them, you feel like you've met them because they show an aspect of yourself." Joseph might not have had the chance to work with his biggest hero, but as a young actor starting off in theater, he would be able to do the next best thing when he was hired to perform in a production of Mosquitoes alongside Olivia Colman. It would become his proudest moment to date in his still brief career. Over the next few years, Joseph would continue to hone his acting chops with further performances on stage in productions like Death Watch and Wishlist. Then his big break would occur when he was cast as Arthur Havisham in the BBC One series Dickensian in 2016. Period pieces would become something of a running theme for Joseph. Even Stranger Things is kind of a period piece when you think about it. And this sense of history is something that draws Joseph into his performances as he searches out what is timeless about the human experience. Following that breakthrough role, Joseph would go on to star in further TV series such as Howard's End, where he played Leonard Bast, and even Catherine the Great, in which he brought to life the historical figure of Prince Paul while working alongside acting great Helen Mirren. He also popped up in a Blink and You'll Miss It cameo in a Season 7 episode of Game of Thrones titled The Spoils of War, in which he plays one of 2 guards who heckle Arya Stark upon her return to Winterfell. With all of these high-profile TV roles, you might imagine Joseph is like the vast majority of his contemporaries and uses social media to network and promote himself. But that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, outside of a Twitter account, Joseph had deleted most of his profiles because, as he put it, "I find it an incredibly image-centric medium that devalues the use of words." Alright, sure, after the premiere of Stranger Things he might have reinstated his Instagram, but believe me when I say it's nothing but obligatory and only includes one post hyping up his new role. And yet, somehow he still has over 540,000 followers. That's the power of Stranger Things, I guess. But honestly, Joseph would rather spend his free time preparing for his roles through detailed research and immersing himself in the time period of the characters he portrays by reading historical texts and listening to the music of the times. It's a habit he brought with him to his experiences on Stranger Things as well. When the creators of Stranger Things, the Duffer Brothers, first cast Joseph to play Eddie Munson, the young actor was as surprised as anyone else. He said, "Obviously, I don't think it's a call you're expecting ever. I did a couple of auditions and they asked me to get involved. That felt very shocking." But with as warm and welcoming a set as Joseph found it to be, he quickly felt right at home. And it's a good thing too because Eddie is an integral part of the season. In a sense, he's a representation of its biggest themes, a symbol of the Satanic Panic that took hold of certain segments of America's population in the 80s. It's a responsibility that Joseph took seriously. He said, "It was kind of an interesting time. Heavy metal really stands in the face of rusty American values. It's a real stark contrast. I think it must have been crazy. I think it's really explored very brilliantly in the season." So does that mean that Joseph is now a proficient D&D dungeon master? Well, not exactly. He only played his first game in a trip to LA while doing some press release of the series. When he was originally hired for the role, he bought himself a book to find out more about the game, but quickly realized it wasn't going to be the way into the character. Instead, he got there through music. Having been an avid guitar player since he was 7, Joseph simply listened to as much heavy metal as he could get into the headspace of Eddie Munson, and when that wasn't enough, he'd pick up the guitar and start playing himself. Now, in terms of what attracted him to the role in the first place, Joseph says that he responded to the way Eddie was written on the page, as a very empathetic character. He said, "He's written to be cared about, and that's a gift for any actor really. He reads as one of those characters that I was always very impressed with growing up, a few years above me, people that seemed to not care how they were perceived or very much presented that way." As for what happens next to Eddie when part 2 of season 4 drops, well, Joseph isn't spoiling anything right now, but he told Digital Spy it gets crazy, they turn it up to 11. Really, no pun intended obviously. I know that none of us can wait to see how everything shakes out for our favorite Hawkins residents, but if you want to follow Joseph onto his next project, then be sure to check out the upcoming film Horde, in which he plays a character named Michael who grows up in the UK foster care system and begins experiencing something that Joseph will only describe as something you have to see for yourself to believe. It's that out there. I'm most definitely gonna check that out, and considering what an upward trajectory Joseph's career appears to be on, I can only imagine the other big projects that are sure to be on his horizon. Thanks for watching this look into the famous life of Joseph Quinn. Be sure to leave a comment on who you'd like to see next, and I'll see you all in another video. Thanks for watching this look into the famous life of Joseph Quinn. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment for who you'd like us to feature next.